Welcome, friends, to another edition of Wampa Radio. This is episode number 22. This is a Star Wars Unlimited podcast, but so much more, Doa.
That's right. As usual, we go way off and talk about random tangents, but we try once in a while to circle back and talk about the headline strategies and discussion points that you all want to hear out there about the world of Star Wars card gaming. Wow, I haven't spoken English in a while, so I'm catching up.
You were gone last week, so you have to come. Yeah, you got to catch your sea legs again.
Have not talked since our last podcast, actually. Yeah, I need to start that up again. Need to practice.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, the reason that he was gone was actually he went to a convention. It was a Jats convention, and the music was so loud he couldn't have a conversation. So he's a bit out of practice. But
the Jats wailing was just way too hard on my eardrums. So I just had to take a vow of silence afterwards to just give myself a break.
We had quite a blast. We had the longest episode of this show's career, as it were, without you, Doa. So
that's amazing.
Isn't it incredible how, like, addition by subtraction, not that any of it was like compelling or no, it's not like.
Yeah, I thought that was a shot as well, Doa. So
I don't know how to take that. So I'll take it the worst way possible.
I would have
from the internet,
I would have taken it as overcompensating to deal with such an immense loss, right? The quality of the show was so low that we just had to drone on, but a lot of it was really the news from last week, and I'm personally kind of excited to hear your thoughts. We got the organized play announcement, and I know that we have yet to hear from you, so perhaps we'll dive into that today. But we're also we're going to do it. We're going to talk about the Wampa Cave Poll of the Week.
Okay, this week's Wampa Cave Poll was a lot less controversial. I think that we brought it back down to earth, as it were, and we're kind of talking in this case about the actual game and not the lore behind it. So we're bringing it back around. This week's Wampa Cave Poll, available every Sunday at Wampa Radio on Twitter, is: what are you most excited for when Star Wars Unlimited launches? The options were competitive tournaments, the limited aspect of it, such as draft and sealed, completing a collection, or just casual gaming around the kitchen table. Doa, you haven't spoken, like you mentioned, in 12 days. So why don't you hit us first with what your selection was?
I mean, competitive tournaments, obviously. Like, is there any question? Like, that is why I play card games. I mean, I play them for fun, but I also have the most fun when I'm competing. So that is going to be an easy choice for me. Although I have to say, my Magic the Gathering playing has gone strictly casual at this point. I'm Commander only, and competitive Commander just sounds like an oxymoron to me. But that's a whole different podcast. So yeah, for me, competitive, easy.
I agree. I think that. Well, you're right. But like the whole competitive aspect of Magic has been interesting to follow along. Competitive.
I said it was a different podcast.
It's a different podcast. You're right.
Yeah, that's right. We don't have to go into that now.
We won't go into it. We're not going to go into it. Charmer, how about you?
So I went against the grain here, and I voted for competitive tournaments because, of course, that is what I'm most excited about. I will say I probably would have leaned more toward casual gaming if I had more free time in my life. I miss the feeling of like a Saturday night of, just kind of drinking around a table, having fun, playing some cheesy, wonky games. But I can't remember the last time that I have done it. Now, I do play casually when I go to events. So a lot of times what happens is that I will either compete, or when I'm casting an event, I spend all day watching other people play it. And then I'm like, well, I want to play too. And so then I'll play in casual stuff afterwards. But it's weird to me because I don't associate that with casual gaming, even though that's the experience, because I'm doing it as a result of a competitive event. So I did select competitive tournaments, but I do miss casual gaming quite a bit.
Well, I will say this. I know that both of you are very busy. You have children that you have to, feed and keep alive sustainably as
Still sounds strange to me.
Isn't it weird?
It's true.
I mean, but
Yeah.
for myself, the Saturday night drinking and playing games by myself is not there's no glamour in it by any means. Like sitting by my computer and playing, rolling up and playing some Talishar games of Flesh and Blood or some Magic or stuff online. That glamorous aspect. It's frankly the community that really rescues you from looking like a complete fool. But I also will take that, go against the grain of which we will bring to the mill, turn it into a fine grist, okay? And then create a nice loaf of bread, which is competitive play. I am so for.
Okay, we went deep with that one. I was wondering where that was going, but you brought it back around.
I did bring it back around. I absolutely I brought it back around. The competitive tournaments. I mean, to me, this is a game that. And if I'm going to compare this to another big title that released recently, which is Lorcana, when Lorcana was getting released and the information was slowly trickling out, the competitive tournament aspect of it for me was also, I'm like, man, like I just want a game that's going to have a big competitive scene, that is going to have tiered tournaments that you can qualify for, like a big deal, something to work towards. And again, I understand that that's not for everybody, but what turned me off of Lorcana, or a part of what turned me off of Lorcana, was that they didn't have anything like that. And for me, the fact that they just had this announcement, it got me even more hyped up for this particular game, because they are going to have lower tier tournaments. They are going to have casual play. They'll have all that. But if we're going down the list of everything here, limited play. I mean, Charm3r and I are absolutely big time limited goons, and we know that we're going to drag you into this for sure. Doa, you're going to be a limited guy too.
Oh yeah. No, I'm learning. I'm learning to love limited.
That's
given up and learning to love limited.
That sounds like a Netflix series. How I Learned to Love Limited, the Doa story. Completing a collection. I've never been a completionist in that regard. Maybe I will be with this, but like I'm not going to be out there chasing every single hyperspace variant. And casual gaming, to me, casual gaming is how we enjoy it. But I mean, nothing gets the blood flowing like competitive tournaments. And you weren't here last week, Doa, so what do you think about the announcements for competitive?
I mean, I think it's great. It sounds like they have a very solid plan for introducing competitive stuff to the game. And it's, on the one hand, I was like, oh, I'm a little bit sad that we don't get like a bigger competitive event sooner. But then I'm like, I kind of agree with what they're saying, where like the set one metas aren't usually like the greatest meta in a card game's history. So it's like, do we really need to rush to that right away? And as much as I enjoy those big tournaments, I'm kind of like, you know what? Yeah, I kind of agree with that take on it. There's still going to be locals to play in and all that, and so yeah, I'm just generally excited about it. Yeah, I think everything I've heard about this game so far has me very optimistic. Frankly, I think the plans they have in place for pretty much everything are pretty good sounding. So yeah, game seems fun from the starter deck games I've played. So the hype continues to build.
I like this. So I think it's a consensus on, with us at least, the competitive tournaments are what we're most excited for. Let's see what the community has decreed. In the lead at 48.9% of by and large, vast majority selecting competitive tournaments at 48.9%. In second place, casual gaming. So a complete 180 from what that would be, 30.7%. Limited at 14.8%, and completing a collection at 5.7%. What this tells me is that people are just hyped to play the damn game. Like, it has nothing to do with the vanity, the shinies, as it were. It's just a matter of, I want to play for keeps or I want to play for fun, but ultimately, I just want to play the game.
I think that's a fair assessment. I will say there are two things that I want to kind of emphasize when I look at the completing a collection percentage. One, I wonder how the existence of all of the like hyperspace variants and things like that, I wonder how much that impacted it, because if you are a true completionist and you're saying to yourself, hey, I have to have every regular, every foil regular, every hyperspace, every foil hyperspace, every showcase or whatever, like that can feel daunting. And so if that's what you view as completing a collection, then that might feel rough. That might not be what you're most excited about. So I can understand that potentially bringing it down. But the positive I see here is, as weird as it sounds, right? I think it's actually a very big positive that completing a collection is the lowest and by a huge margin, because this tells me, as Flake said, people care more about the game and less about the investment, right? With Lorcana, let's be honest, part of the hype was that everybody wanted to make money. There are still people flipping it and not playing the game. You get the scalpers, you get the people who treat it like they're stocks and bonds. They want to diversify their portfolio with sealed cases and whatever. When I see a very low percentage of folks interacting with this poll saying, hey, like the collection isn't my number one driver, that's refreshing to me, because hopefully every game has it. It's unavoidable, but hopefully this means we're going to have people invested in the game itself. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. And I think Star Wars is in an interesting place because there's so much collectability around the intellectual property of Star Wars, right? But there's so many ways to engage with that collectability, right? I mean, like right back here, I've got a VHS box set, I've got a replica flight helmet. So like, I don't need to collect every single version of every single card in the game because I'm already collecting Star Wars stuff. I have storyboard sections from the old movies on the wall, over there. So it's like I've got plenty of Star Wars collectible stuff already. And if you look at the Disney side of things, yeah, sure. I mean, you have collectibles there as well in kind of a similar nature, but there's never really been like a Disney card game before where there have been Star Wars card games before. And so I think that's what makes Lorcana so much more appealing from the strictly collectible sense than like this game does. And frankly, I think that's a point in this game's favor. I'm frankly disgusted by how people treat Lorcana like stocks and bonds and all that kind of stuff. Because at the end of the day, like, this is a card game made for kids to enjoy and have fun, and it's tragic that a bunch of people are treating it like Wall Street and buying all the stuff up, and the people that this game is made for aren't getting to play it as much. Like that kind of horrifies me as a gamer first. So it seems like we're going to be able to avoid that with this one. So that makes me happy. Yeah.
I love seeing the posts where folks are like, hey, man, like I bought out an entire store's Lorcana supply and then flipped it for double. And in my head, I'm like, that's like, you went to somebody's house, you got all their Halloween candy, and then you sold it to the parents who wanted Halloween candy for their kids. And now you're like excited about it. Like that's mentally what I...
Those are the same people that like take the whole bucket of Halloween candy. Like we had trick or treaters this year, because we finally we bought a house this year, so we actually had trick or treaters, and we had to go to a party a little bit later on, around 8 p.m. or so. So we left a bucket out of candy, and sure enough, within like 30 minutes, we had on our door cam a group coming and just taking the entire bucket, and I'm like, well, I'm never doing that again, because like two people treated appropriately, and then someone stole the whole bucket.
Yeah,
come on, people.
It's disgusting, and like that's the worst part about November 1st is seeing all the videos of this stuff coming out. The best part about November 1st, though, is that the candy is all on sale. So, woo!
I mean, hey, most of it's like high fructose corn syrup anyway in the U.S. So it's like you're only hurting yourselves if you're taking all that stuff. So they're the ones who are losing in the end by gorging themselves on this like poison essentially. So there you go.
Yeah, but yeah, fine. Way to buzzkill it, big time.
Hey,
you're spot on. There is one thing I want to address from the previous episode, which was there were some comments, and again, we welcome all dialogue, and I want to also preface this with the fact that it is perfectly okay to disagree and have that kind of debate. It doesn't mean that somebody's a bad person.
Have you seen the internet?
I have seen it, and that's why I want to preface this way, because I am well versed in how if you don't agree with somebody,
usually on the internet there's one opinion, and if you don't have that opinion, people are very upset with you.
Correct.
Whatever the topic is, there's kind of a general consensus that emerges.
You, Flake, I'm just upset with you regardless of your opinions.
Well, that's fine. I know. Like that's more of like the nucleus of who I am. Is like you hate my core being. It's
once again, keeping it real.
Yeah. Totally. I mean, that's what if we're going to be anything, we're going to be true and authentic. So the conversation was that I think there was a comment, and again, I apologize if I don't remember the name, but and this, the discussion that this brought up is not one of malice, and it's not one of any type of negative friction. I like debate, and I like other people's viewpoints. But the question, or the comment rather, was that somebody would be very surprised if there was prize money associated with these tournaments. And my reply was, I'd be surprised if there wasn't, frankly. I'd be incredibly shocked if there wasn't prize money associated with it. And to which the debate kind of then rolled over to that it shouldn't have prize money because they don't want to attract the people away from games like that are out there to play this stuff. Now, I think that all three of us have been around competitive card gaming for long enough that I can confidently say that if Star Wars Unlimited does not have a hefty cash prize associated to these major tournaments, that it is not going to attract players. And that is, I understand that some people say, well, what about the love of the game and the love of competition? That, unfortunately, is a naive viewpoint because people's time is valuable. And I'm saying this from the perspective and reality of all three of us are very good friends with players who compete in card games and win a lot of money in card games. They also play card games that they don't particularly like or care at all about. They go to them because the value of learning the game and playing the game is exceptionally high. So if you want your game to succeed, you need to have a competitive scene. And if you want to have a competitive scene, you need to have good and excellent and elite players pay attention to your game, create content for your game, bring their following to that game, because this is the cascading effect of it, which is if I'm going to use Majin Bey as an example here, because Majin Bey is oftentimes the number one ranked player in Legends of Runeterra. He also plays Flesh and Blood because the EV and his skill set there is good. He also played in like Battle. I don't know if he played in the Battle Spirit Saga thing, but he's
pretty good game.
Played
Actually,
in at least one event.
Yeah,
he's also done Grand
I like
Archive.
Battle Spirit Saga.
Yeah,
I like Battle Spirits too, but
what I'm saying is, like, I'm just trying to throw a wide blanket on this because he also commands like 1,000+ viewers on Twitch all the time. And he has people that follow his deck lists, follow his recommendations and whatever. So if a game like Star Wars cannot attract a player like that, it's not just that one player that they're towing into the game. It's them and all the influence that they exert over the people who appreciate and enjoy their content. If you're just immediately not caring about that, then there's so much lost opportunity there. And the way you attract these players is cash money because their time is valuable and they don't care about playmats and they don't care about anything that they cannot turn into cash.
Yeah, I mean, I think on the one hand, I think influencers are overrated. I've always kind of thought that. I don't think they bring the permanent eyeballs that people think they bring. But beyond that, I think at the end of the day, you're going to have a competitive scene in a game whether you like it or not. And the more you jump in and support that, the more you're going to get, loyal players, really, at the end of the day, which is what it's about. Because if you have a game, people are going to want to see who the best is, right? That's the essence of competition, not just esports, but sports, but, everything throughout the history of mankind. So if people are going to want to find out, right? And so if you have tournaments that, have no cash prize, you're not going to attract the best players. You're not going to find out who the best is, and people aren't going to like how that sits, right? Because people want to know who is the best. So yeah, I think longevity, the game-wise, you want to have appealing tournaments for people to come and take seriously, just because that's how people like to compete, historically.
Yeah, I agree with the sports thing. That's one of the things that crossed my mind. Obviously, card games are not sports. I do not think that is anywhere near like a true parallel. But when you're talking about the difference between competing for something of value versus playing for the love of the game, I do think there are some parallels. When you think of traditional sports, right? Yes, people would probably still play football if there was no NFL. They would still play basketball if there was no NBA. But would we see the level of competition, right? Would we see the resources going into growing players and participants in those sporting programs if there was not money involved? Probably not. But when I think of card games, as somebody who's played a lot of card games, especially failed ones, unfortunately, because I continue to fall in love with ones that don't get a following. Part of the reason that they don't get a following is in part due to either a complete lack of competitive support, or the competitive support was just mishandled, or things like that. Because at the end of the day, folks want to feel like it's not just they're engaging with the game, but that they have something to work toward, right? It's a goal. Even if your goal is to never be the world champion, having something that's as simple as like, I want to win my locals, I want to win, a state level event, something like that, is still a carrot that people can chase. And I can't think of any card game in the last 20 years that has been not like big three successful, but even moderately successful long-term without a competitive scene of some sort. Now, Lorcana might be able to pull that off, but that will 100% be the exception, not the rule, because of the intellectual property there. And I do not think that Star Wars, even though it's a huge intellectual property, can bank on that, because obviously otherwise other card games that Star Wars has released would have worked out, and that has not been the case. So I think competition is very important, and I think that having a cash prize is important. And you do also, I think, want to attract other players from games. I'm in the middle. I think that initial influencer marketing is way overhyped, but I think that if you can get somebody who can fall in love with your game, so like if we're using our friend Caleb Majin Bay, for example, getting him to play your game at launch for like a stream or two, not really worth the investment, in my opinion. And I love him and I don't want to take money out of his pocket, but I don't think that's the case. But if he falls in love with your game and then he is streaming it, day in, day out, or 2 or 3 times a week, and you get that repeated recurring investment from all of his viewers, I do think that there is value in that, because that's how you start to build a community. You get repeated interaction between people, and
loyalty.
Loyalty. So I do think that competition overall is good for any card game, but I also I kind of cringe and shudder, and I have fear and heart palpitations when I hear phrases like, you should play it for the love of the game. Because when Artifact launched, there was a lot of folks saying like, hey, I know Valve is supposed to do this $1 million tournament thing or whatever, but people should play it just because of the love of the game. And then that game launched with no ladder system, no in-game prize support, there was like no carrot on a stick, basically. You were supposed to play it for the love of the game, and people didn't, because they had nothing to work toward. And it's even worse, like when you think about a new player perspective, if you're trying to learn a game and all you're doing is losing and there's nothing for you to work toward, why would you continue to play? You're like, all I do is lose. I'm just wasting my time.
But yet I still played the Legend of the Five Rings LCG.
Well,
I don't know.
Yeah.
It was because it's a great game, though. I did play that one for the love of the game. I will admit that. Yeah, that was just a fantastic card game.
It's like Star Wars CCG. Again, like there's no incentive from a reward perspective to play it. It just so happens to be an exceptionally designed and amazing game. And I don't think that Star Wars U is going to be on that particular level. It very well could, but I also think that we're in a reality now, folks, where people's time is valuable. The nature of games these days is that you need to entice the player where their valuable time has to be rewarded in a certain way. And the way to do that is to put tournaments that have like real life reward. And I will say this, it doesn't have to necessarily be cash. So I see the thought process of saying it doesn't, like, why does it have to be money? Because One Piece tournaments will sometimes reward very rare and exclusive variants, like alternate arts of popular cards that people want. But you know what those players who win those tournaments do? They immediately go to the vendor and turn it into $800 or $100 or $1,000. Like they don't hold the card for the love of the game to say, I got it. They hold the card until somebody sells it or buys it off of them so they can take the $800 and put it in the bank. Like that is an inherent truth to competition. It's the same reason why a basketball player or a baseball player will hold out being offered $20 million a season to go somewhere to get $22 million a season. And then you're saying like, well, what about the love of the game? They're in demand. Their time is valuable. Same thing with all these pro players. They can go and devote their, 30 hours a week playing card games to Flesh and Blood because they know, hey, there's a $20,000 tournament once a month, and then there's a $300,000 prize pool for World Championships at the end of the year. That's worth investing my time to. So I think, yeah.
Just one last thing I want to say on this, because I also think that if you're somebody who plays the game casually, it can kind of get lost on why something like this is important. Because if you say to yourself, like, well, I'll never compete professionally, so I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. This is just for the elite of the elite. One of the things that you have to also understand is that even for casual players, every other game that's out there, whether you know it or not, is competing for your time. And most of the other ones are also offering incentives, even for the casual players. You look at digital games, right? How many digital card games have login rewards? How many digital card games have like quests that you have to do to get some coins or whatever? And even with the physical card games, you go to Friday Night Magic, you go to your armories for Flesh and Blood, you'll get promos, right? You're getting something. And I know that Star Wars Unlimited is going to be doing some of this, right? They've already talked about their promos or whatever, but that's all part of that competitive like pipeline. That's because even for casual players, every other game is trying to compete for your time, and being able to slap like cash prizes on an advertisement is still very relevant. Even if you never end up earning a cent of it, there is power in saying we have a $1 million prize pool for 2024, right? It's what every game has been doing. It's kind of the industry standard now. And if you don't do that, like, people will pay less attention. Like, that's just the reality.
I do have one more thing to add as well with that. And this kind of goes along with what you just said, right? Where we do have the standard where it's like $1 million prize pool for your year of card game tournaments. But I think there's a huge miss happening industry-wide right now where they have this enormous prize pool and then they invest almost nothing into their broadcast for these tournaments where they're giving away these massive prize pools. And I'm putting on my esports caster / esports broadcast producer hat for this for a second. And I'm saying, if you're putting all this money into the prize pool and you're producing a stream where like you can't see the cards because there's a glare on the table, and your commentators are just some dudes that are doing it for fun, or you're paying them nothing and they paid their own way there and all that, it's like, if you don't have people that are seriously invested in making that product good, then that's an enormous waste of your money then to put up a prize pool that big, right? Because the whole point of having something like this, of having a big competitive scene, is to tell the stories of these players and build these stars and put another carrot on the stick, right? Functionally, you're giving people another thing to aspire to, right? So to have that system operate properly, you need to have a strong broadcast to support that. And I think Magic the Gathering generally does a pretty good job of having some very solid broadcasts. I'd say they're definitely the best in the industry. Pokemon is like, okay, it's pretty good. Flesh and Blood is like pretty good. It could be better, but it's not bad. But a lot of other card games kind of just like do whatever, right? So I think that's another big thing I want to see, is more investment put into making like a good broadcast product around these games, because you're giving away like hundreds of thousands of dollars to the winner and it looks like a potato stream on somebody's cell phone. Like, that's kind of embarrassing, right? Especially when it comes to like a large intellectual property like Star Wars too. I don't think I'm not the person who answers to Lucasfilm, obviously, but I don't think they would enjoy seeing their IP put up that way. That's just me, but
I don't know.
I
I
think
can
that's
hear
another
somebody.
thing to think about too.
I could hear somebody on the other end of the phone going, "What, you want more money?" Qui-Gon Jinn talked into a Bic razor. Make it work.
I mean, the thing is though, is that you gotta. If I would say honestly, I feel like if anything, you take away a little bit of the prize pool and pull it more in the broadcast. And again,
Sure.
I am
Yeah,
biased. I admit that I have a bias here, but
for sure,
my bias is more that I want to see these stories being told properly, because there's so much work and dedication and real like great human stories going into the people that decide to like play these games and put everything they've got into these games. And you know, we see that in things like the NFL broadcasts, right? We see a lot of emphasis being put on the stories of the players, right? And I've always said people aren't fans of plays, they're fans of players. And it's going to be the same in like this game. People aren't going to be big fans of like a certain deck. They're going to be big fans of players because of how they pilot those decks. So we got to do better bringing those stories out, I think, industry wide.
I would personally love to see just once like a card game broadcast where it's almost got a format of like Ninja Warrior, right? Where you have the really cool like background for not just how the person prepares, but also like some of their story, some of their previous accomplishments. Like when I think of that, and that's not even like a really competitive thing. It's just like a TV game show, really, right? But I think that they always do good storytelling that is something that could be, you know, done far better at a card game level. Part of that is the nature of card games. So for those who are not like understanding necessarily why don't studios do this or whatever, if you're running an event and you kind of like don't know who the top 8 is or who the top 16 or whatever is going to be ahead of time, it can be very hard to like cut player promos because, you know, you might feature last year's world champion, and then if he starts 0-2 and drops, like, what do you do? So part of
then
it,
that's a storyline too, right?
Yeah,
That's a storyline.
It absolutely
legit.
is.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, that's part of the reason you don't get those in-depth player like profiles and focuses. But I don't
think you're going to get those right away. Like when a card game is just being born, essentially, you're not going to get a ton of those. But I think that's why, you know, honestly, that's why you bring in talent that knows card games, so they can tell you, hey, that person over there did all these things in that other game, and that makes them somebody we want to take a look at. And so to have people there working on the broadcast that have that kind of knowledge is going to let you do a profile on that player and say, hey, you know, you've had the success in all these other card games. What drew you to this one? What's so great about Star Wars Unlimited that you wanted to play that? You know, what's your approach to this game? There's all sorts of interesting stuff that can happen right away at the very first tournaments, but you don't know about that as a production company unless you have people there that do. So,
but what attracts those players? It's the cash prizes, right? Like it all comes back to the.
It's the waifu body pillows.
It's the love of the game. It's definitely not the love of the game.
Pillows. That's right.
It's the Wampa coming soon to Wampa Radio.
I mean, sure, it's partially the money, but. It's partially the money, but you're going to get, I mean, and there are people who are like career card game players, right? Where they will play a card game because of the EV and all that. But there's also a lot of other people that are going to be at those tournaments that just really love the game and they want to be the best in that game. They may have never even played another card game, right? Or maybe they played other card games and this is the one they want to focus on. So,
but look at this.
You don't know until you talk to them.
But look at somebody like Brody Spurlock, who just turned 18, who's been playing competitively for 1.5 to 2 years. Who is definitely set now, and this is his career. Like, this is what I think there needs to be an understanding of, is that this isn't just a recreation for some people anymore. Competitive card gaming is a career choice. And the thing about it is that in the same vein that, you know, if your goal is to be a Major League Baseball star, your percentage of success and becoming wealthy in that regard is exceptionally minimal. Does that deter many people? It might, but there's still a lot of people who are that's their dream and they chase it. And the reason they chase it is partially maybe it's the love of the game, but also if they could just play every weekend in the corner for free, the other option is, do I want to go ahead and sign hundreds of $1 million contract and become a star in the league? Like, that is also an attractive element. And part of it that attracts people to these games and is that some people have those types of pipe dreams when it comes to competitive card gaming, is that, hey, I can do this every day. I can play. The love of the game factor is what is keeping them motivated and not, shooting their brains out because they're doing something they don't love. But they wouldn't do it to that degree. I'm saying, like, they wouldn't do it to that degree if there wasn't a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Like, I'm sure Brody
depends on the person. For some people, absolutely. I will say, in my many years of interacting with professional players across both traditional and esports and card games, you can win tournaments if you're motivated by the prize. You will never be the best if you're only motivated by the prize. Ultimately, the love of the game is what's going to produce the game's very, very best players every time. And you're not going to have that ambition to grind a game, any game, whether it's basketball or or Star Wars Unlimited, to that extent if you don't absolutely love it and are obsessed with it too. So there's a pretty good dose of both, I think, that you're going to find in tournaments.
I think that it is definitely both. And what I would point out, as you talk about pro players across any spectrum, card games, esports, traditional sports, the financial independence allows them to dive further into their love. I think that's the other part that people are missing out on, right? When I think of Michael Hamilton from Flesh and Blood, for example, he quit his job to play Flesh and Blood competitively. He bet on himself and then he won the world championship. But part of the reason he was able to win the world championship and play the game he loves is because he freed up the time to focus on it, right? If you don't have some of this financial reward, then if folks have a full-time job playing on nights and weekends or whatever, it might be people who still have that same love of the game, that same passion, but the quality of their play, the quality of their experiences and others involved might not reach the same heights otherwise.
I think we're starting to kind of talk in circles a little bit too between our points, but I think what it all comes down to is that, like, yes, obviously they're going to have cash prizes. I mean, it'd be shocking if they didn't.
All right. Headlines. There's one.
Yeah. Wow.
I think
that was a longer chat than I expected.
I thought so too.
Good one, though.
But I mean, in reality, this episode was kind of skinny on the bone a little bit, because there wasn't a whole lot. I figured that it was worth at least getting your extra perspective. And again, we always appreciate any kind of conversation, any kind of comment. And even if you disagree with us, we don't take it as a malicious intent. It's merely people have different viewpoints.
I'll take it maliciously.
You're
the blood enemy for life. Watch out.
I assume every interaction with me is malicious and I deserve it.
No, that's just the government and karma.
I have to get back in the Midwest spirit and be very passive aggressive about it. That's
that's so nice of you to say.
So look out.
Yeah. Bless you,
It'd be
child.
nice if someone had better opinions. That's all I'm saying.
So the one headline for the week is pretty paltry because it's like an announcement of an announcement, which is that FFG's stream on the cunning aspect debuts on November 11th. Currently, we're recording this on November 2nd at approximately 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Nonetheless, friends, let's get to some spoilers. Spoilers. I know that this is a character that you very much like. Charmer, I believe.
Both of us.
I've only seen like the first 2 seasons of Rebels, so I'm not super attached to, and Ahsoka, I guess, but I'm not particularly attached to Hera. But I'm happy to. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say I'll dive in. I enjoy Hera Syndulla. So that is the card that was revealed, but very specifically, this is the leader card. This is command and heroism. When it is just as the leader card, it has the text, ignore the aspect penalty on Spectre cards you play. Also has the tags Rebel, Twi'lek, and Spectre, so part of the squad. Epic action, of course, is deploy when you hit the resource threshold. For her, it is 6. The actual unit itself is a 6 cost ground unit, has a 4 power, 6 health. Still says ignore the aspect penalty on Spectre cards you play, so you don't have to worry about, okay, well, I've played her, now I don't get the cool tax break, if you will. That's what I'm calling this, by the way. Hera is pro tax break.
She didn't really like engaging with the Senate, though. It seemed like she seemed kind of anti-government, though.
This is when she was still a rebel too, so she's just not paying imperial taxes. In my mind.
And the color for H&R block is also green. So
yeah, she's H&R blocking your opponent.
Sponsorship there, yeah.
So on attack, she says you may give an experience token to another unique unit. Now this is interesting because I believe this is the first time we've seen unique interactions, like cards that require to have the unique identifier for the effect. We've had things like Force and things like that, which are traditionally on unique units. But unless I'm forgetting something, and it's entirely possible, mind you, because I suffered a lot of head trauma as a child. But unless I'm forgetting something, I think this is the first time that we've seen unique specifically referenced here on card text. Overall, I think that the real value here is obviously the ignore the aspect penalty on Spectre cards, because 6 for 4/6 stat wise doesn't really give you much to write home about. Also, not a great way to protect yourself, no shield or anything. I mean, the 6 health is nice because it gets you over some of the damage thresholds that are important. The on attack is also just a +1/+1 in stats every turn, which isn't a ton either. But I suspect that this is just meant to be your linchpin if you want to run the entire Spectre crew. We haven't seen all of them yet. Like, we haven't seen Zeb. I don't believe we've seen Chopper, et cetera, et cetera. But if those are all individually very powerful, then this could be a very powerful leader, because obviously she's the enabler.
Well, let's take a minute to look at the Spectre cards real quick while we're on the topic. So I've got the spoilers up from everything that's been released so far for the first set. And Kanan Jarrus 4 for a 4/5. On attack, if you'll recall, you may discard 1 card from the defending player's deck for each friendly Spectre unit. So if you do get a lot of them out on the boards, you're going to start milling your opponent a little bit. And heal 1 damage from your base for each different aspect among the discarded cards. So you're going to heal like roughly, probably, 2 or 3, depending on what popped up when you discarded rather. So, yeah, I mean, that's strong right away. Ezra Bridger lets you look at the top card of your deck and, like, choose to, like, play it or discard it or something. I can't remember the exact details there, but some good deck manipulation. Sabine, while there are at least 3 other aspects among other friendly units, this unit can't be attacked unless she gains Sentinel, which is also pretty strong. On attack, you may deal 1 damage to the defender or to a base. So she does a little bit of extra damage there. Only 3 defense, so she is vulnerable to removal, it seems like, but can become annoying if you've got other Spectre buddies out. So, yeah, I mean, I think you kind of assume that it's going to be a playable archetype. I definitely don't think at the moment, with what we've seen, it looks like a top meta pick, but I think it's really important that the game has these sort of like tribal decks you can put together. If you really like Rebels or something like that, you can learn to pilot this set, because I don't think it's going to be terrible. I think it's going to be, decent, and if you're really good at it, it could be a really fun way to engage with the game. So, I'm hyped. I was really hyped to see this card.
I like this card a lot, and purely from the fact that, again, just the static ability of ignoring aspect penalties, tax evasion, so, and I believe that if you're facing off against the Trade Federation tribal.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Exactly.
Then you just auto win, right?
Basically, yeah, you just circumvent all of that. But still, yeah, you're right. Erwin R. Shyster would be proud of this card. But ultimately,
don't know who that is.
That's a wrestler from the 80s and 90s, my friend.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
IRS, Erwin R. Shyster. He was he was an accountant.
Yeah.
Oh,
and he always wore like a tie, and then he had like an office shirt, but with the sleeves cut off because he's a wrestler, so he still got to show off the guns.
He wasn't in the cartoon, though, I don't think.
Dude.
I don't recall. I don't think he really appealed to the kid demographic, it seems like.
What an amazing era for wrestling. Where it's like,
I remember like
it really was a great
Roberts
era.
and all that, you know, like Hulk Hogan, the Undertaker, well, when he was like way younger. He's still around, obviously, but you know, I remember some of them.
So
I just miss good gimmick wrestling. That's what it comes down to.
Well,
we got to talk about we got to talk about the promotion I used to go and watch in LA, but
emergency pack button. Emergency pack button.
Yeah.
So Hera and the ability to actually just circumvent that, all kinds of stuff. Like, again, she's not as imposing as other leaders. She's not necessarily a game changer when she's on the board as a unit. But the fact is you don't care about that because everything else is what's getting work done. Everything else has the Spectre synergy. This just means that you can not worry about tailoring your characters, your units around 3 specific aspects. You just put the Spectres in there and you go crazy. This is a type of deck where right now in set 1 will probably be like a tier 3 deck. It's likely going to be a tier 3 deck. But as new Spectres get released, it's much like in Magic where whenever a new set is released, there are people who are like, is there any modern
Merfolk.
or merfolk, or is there any modern playable
goblins.
card? If not, I don't care. If people are just all geared about Spectre, like they're going to come out new sets, and some people are going to be like, I love the Spectre, my Spectre deck. Are there new Spectres I can put in there to improve it? I think that this deck is going to be pretty bad early on, but as new sets could come out, and we do know that there's going to be standard rotation, so my suspicion is this is a thing where towards the late end of the pre-rotation kind of thing, this is a deck that's going to scale with time.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say one other thing to point out is that as you think about like future design space and things to keep an eye out for, I think of Sabine's card where it's like, are there at least 3 aspects among friendly units? If we get an archetype later on where it's, cards get bonuses based on the number of aspects visible on your side of the table, her allowing you to break that still would make those cards then more viable, right? So like if we get something where like it's a unit and it gets +1/+1 for each aspect among friendly units you control, well, she lets you cheat a bunch of those in very cost effectively, right? So that's another thing to kind of keep an eye out for, is not just Spectre, but anything that lets you kind of get away with benefiting from breaking, the rule of 3 for aspects, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, every mechanic in a card game is just made to be broken for the purpose of card design. So ultimately, I'd love to see more, aspect cheating kind of stuff in there. I think you're gonna have to be really careful with it from a design perspective, because the balance could get very wonky with that being a big mechanic at some point in the future. But it'd be cool to see it played around with more. As I look at this, because I always kind of like to think like, how would I build this? And if I just knowing what we've seen revealed so far, I mean, you could be like, all right, well, I could do like this and like a vigilance base, and then try to run sentinels, and then try to find some more shield generation somewhere, and just try to put a bunch of bodies in front of your Spectre people, put shields on them to make them less vulnerable to, like damage from wherever, and then just try to be annoying, I guess.
That's my mantra in life, man. Just
do it.
Survive and be annoying. That's
Spectre control.
I'm all for it. I also want to give more love to SWDB, SWDB. We love you, so thank you for this, because some of the cards that we're going to be featuring here and talking about, they were released like less than an hour prior to us starting
the presses.
Yeah, and I, without hesitation, I go to swdb.com. And there they are, ready to go. So thank you, SWDB. What you do for this community is immeasurable.
I visit that website like every day. It's awesome.
I would I am always there. In fact, I'm there right now. I'm there right now.
Me too. We probably all are.
3 of SWDB's current page views are us.
Yeah,
that's right. You're welcome, SWDB.
I'm gonna do the next one because I want to give you the big boy, if that's all right, Doa.
Oh, I'd love the big boy.
All right. So the next one is an aggression card. It's a 1-cost upgrade. It is called Infiltrator's Skill. The text reads, attached unit gains Saboteur. Simple enough. It is an Infiltrator skill, a learned tribal, I guess, or tagline to it. And it just gives your the unit +1/+1. Can be a vehicle, can be a ground unit, can be a space unit, can be anything, frankly. Is this the first card that we have with Jyn Erso on it?
Yes.
I believe so, yeah.
Sweet, because we have Krennic, so there's no surprise that like the Rogue One, we have Cassian Andor art that we've seen as well. This is the first indication that Jyn Erso rocked the Imperial garb as well, which is pretty rad. This card for me, for a single aspect, so it's 1 cost and all it costs you is aggression. This card for me is very good. I think that this is a very good card. The 1 cost +1/+1, nothing to write home about. But you have mentioned this multiple times, Charmer, that Saboteur is likely going to be one of the more premier, more impactful keywords. I tend to agree as well. And I think that this is a card. We know there's going to be sideboards. We know it's going to be best of 3. This might be a card that people will put as a sideboard card, or like have 1 in the main deck and have potentially another 2 in the sideboard if they're up against something that just rolls a crap ton of Sentinels. I think that this card is going to be impactful.
Yeah, I mean, if I was playing an aggressive deck, I wouldn't mind running a few of these in main board. Just because it's like it's 1 for 1, so you've got decent value right off the bat with that. Saboteur is nearly always going to be a useful skill. And yeah, I mean, if your opponent is shield heavy or sentinel heavy, you get that kind of added bonus. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, certainly sideboard, but again, like based on what we've seen so far, it seems good enough that at this point, I'd throw a couple in the main board if I was playing aggression. But, we've seen what, half the cards in the set roughly about right now? Something like that. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of other stuff out there. But I like this card. I think for a common, I think it's really good. Yeah. And I will say, too, you mentioned the learned part or learned, classification for these upgrades. I like that the upgrades all have different sort of types because that's yet another thing we can make cards around in the future. So I love that kind of stuff because I'm like, oh, good. That's going to be something where maybe I can, maybe learned upgrades are going to be crucial for some sort of like aspect of a deck down the line. That's
Jedi training.
Yeah, there you go. Yes, exactly. Jedi training. Yes, make it happen. Come on.
I love everything about this card, like top to bottom. As Flake said, one aspect, so very cost effective in terms of splashing into decks, only costs 1. So even if you have to pay the tax, like 3 isn't the end of the world. The +1/+1 and Saboteur are amazing. It's a common, so you can pick these up in limited. I also just really adore the art. I know that in the past, we've kind of highlighted some times when we felt like the art was a bit wonky. I think that this is one of the better art pieces I've seen so far.
Yeah,
not just because I love Jyn Erso as a character. After Sabine, she's probably my second favorite Star Wars character, but this art just looks very well done. Like it's a good, like well-positioned shot. It's iconic. Like, exactly what it's referencing. This is something that's going to look really good in foil too. I top down, like I said, I love everything about this.
Yeah, I mean, on the topic of art, because you got me to, I'm always the one who's going to be critical of the art. I do have a degree in studio art, so I feel warranted. I was a graphic designer at one point in my past pre-esports life, so I feel like I have, the ability to critique this kind of stuff. Here's why I like this card's art as well, because firstly, she fits into the background. That's been a criticism of mine for some of the other card art, is that the background looks kind of just roughed in, no real thought put into it, and so the character seems to kind of be floating in front of it, which isn't very engaging. Also, just the way the lines all point to the center, this card is going to look great in hyperspace treatment, so that's exciting too. Just going back to Hera Syndulla for a second, that's a good example of where like the character's well rendered rather. The shading is good, the lighting seems solid, but if you look at the background, it looks very like roughed in. It looks frankly like incomplete, And then that's been kind of like a common through line for my criticism for the art in this game so far. And you compare that with, where I almost said Jyn Erso's card with Infiltrator Skill, which features Jyn Erso. The background is not really much more complex, but just the way that it's done points you to the character. It puts the character into the background. The lighting is much more consistent around it. It's just a better constructed piece of art. Sure.
Yeah. And the light in the background, like when you just look at the way that it's hitting her, it does look like the light is emanating from behind her, right? Like even just like the shadowing feels appropriate. Like I said, I adore everything about this card, but we've dogged on some of the other art in the past, and I wanted to give credit where credit was due because I think this one, Sandra, if you're listening, you did a fantastic job on this piece.
Fun fact though, Infiltrator Skill, the artist, Sandra Chlavinska, is the same
artist.
It's the same artist as Hera Syndulla. So
that's so strange,
isn't it?
Because the lines are so much cleaner on Infiltrator's Skill than Hera's card.
Like the thing for me about Hera Syndulla's artwork is that the console, like the dashboard, like where she's got the holding on to the reins of this ship that she's flying, the chair she's in and the console feel like they're like crooked. Like one of them's angled one way and the other one's angled another way.
You don't even see the other part of the chair. She's kind of just floating in space.
Yeah.
That is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Like, that makes me wonder if like Hera's card is maybe like part of a larger art piece that they just zoomed in on for this card or something like that.
Usually, I mean, that's
explain
usually
a little bit lesser detail. No, I'm saying like maybe there was more than just her in the original piece or something like
okay,
that.
I
They
get
just
you.
decided, oh, this is what we want to use for Hera. Like,
Okay.
I don't know. I have no idea. But when I see something like that, that makes me kind of wonder if that's possibly the case
Sure.
there. Because that does happen with card games sometimes. We're like, oh, well, we can use this for multiple cards instead. So, yeah.
All right, let's go
Very
on
interesting.
to the big boy.
All right, cool. Well, yeah, I'm hyped to get to talk about this one. It's the Devastator. It's another large Star Destroyer. Yes, bring on the large Star Destroyers. I want to make my large Star Destroyer deck. Let's do it. 10 for a 10/10. Command Villainy, Imperial Vehicle, Capital Ship. It's got Sentinel. It's got Overwhelm. And when played, you may deal damage to a unit equal to the number of resources you control. And if you're playing this thing, you're probably going to have at least 10 resources, right? So unless there's like a way to like cheapen this or something, but you're going to probably have 10, and that means you're going to be doing 10 damage to, you know, something out there, which is probably going to kill it. I don't think we've seen anything yet that if it, you know, unless it has a shield or something, it's going to survive a hit like that. So very cool card. Another card I think is going to look neat in hyperspace treatment, because you're going to get the space, you know, coming off of the side and all that, a little bit more of the planet. I like it.
It's spoiled by Brett Ballett. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, so thank you very much.
Brett Ballet.
There's
I don't know. I have no idea.
It's a double T at the end, so I'm guessing it's Ballot, but yeah, either way. Thank you very much for the spoiler. But one aspect of this, and I don't know if this is unique to this particular card, but Sentinel is like highlighted for some reason, like on the card itself. Maybe that's just like.
Let me go back to see if that's the case, because it's a mechanic that's you know, important on your opponent's turn, which might be a reason for that.
In the past, they have always been highlighted unless it's a conditional Sentinel. So there are some cards that say, like, if it's undamaged, or if you have, I forget the exact wording, but the one that's the Emperor's Royal Guard, right? It's like if you have an official, I think. But so if it's conditional, it's just got a bar around it, and then if it has Sentinel, it's the like bar around it and it's red, and that's just because they want you to know, like, hey, you can't attack through this. They want the visual indicator.
It's easier to spot for your opponent. I think that's a good thing to add on there.
This card, dude, so it's a legendary. I mean, we need to talk about that. You know, it fits into Villainy Command, so you're in that ramp sphere, which is where you want to be for sure. A 10/10 for 10. I mean, this is the pinnacle so far. This is the top of the mountain, as we've seen, when it comes to sheer power. It's not even the Executor, which is crazy. It's the Devastator, which is another significant ISD that's out there. But still, when played, deal damage to a unit. Like, this is it 2-for-1 something. Like, you get the benefit of more presence, and they lose the benefit of something not even paltry. This is like, you can take down any big ship that you see with this thing. It just shows up and smokes it out of the sky. Then you're tasked with getting through it. And if it survives, if it's there, your Overwhelm ability means that if that lone X-Wing or that lone little weenie of a ship is left in its midst, it will get gobbled up and it'll provide change. You know, like, that's how disgusting this card is. I think that the more and more that these cards are released, and I have said this multiple times, I'm a control player at heart. Playing things like that have control, ramp, and late game explosion and late game dominance is how I love to play card games. This just once again hammers another nail into the coffin for me, being like, you're going to be playing command, you're going to be playing ramp. This is the top end. So thank you FFG for this card.
It is exciting. I mean, you got to have cards for the the Timmies, right, in the card game, where it's like they just want to play big stuff, but it's even better when that big stuff becomes viable. But you don't want to make it too viable. You got to be careful there.
I would like to propose, hear me out. I would like to propose that from now on, Timmy's are Flakes and Johnny's are Doas and Spike's are Charmers.
Whoa. Okay,
I've been a Johnny my whole career, so.
All right, so for those who don't know, a Timmy is somebody who likes to do crazy, funky stuff. The Johnny, what's the Johnny?
No, you got it.
No.
The Timmy, let me explain it. Spike is going to play whatever meta deck is going to win the tournament.
Yeah.
Whatever is the best right now, that's what Spike is going to play, because all Spike cares about is winning. Timmy doesn't really play competitively, just has a fun time playing big things on the board and feeling like you've got something powerful to swing at your opponent. Not really trying super hard. The player that was excited about craw worms back in Magic the Gathering in the 90s, basically. But that's a deep cut. But anyway, and the Johnny is a player that wants to win, that's competitive, but has to win on their terms. They're going to play the off-meta deck, and they're going to master that because they need to feel stylish and cool while they're winning. That means more to them than just net decking. So there you go.
And
There's
then
your breakdown.
And then the Spike, just plays whatever the best deck. So okay, I'm gonna sort of maybe amend what you had mentioned, Charmer. A Flake deck is a deck that leads up to one big card that wins the game. So I thought about it in my mind. Okay, when I was playing Hearthstone, I played a Katoon deck, which was like. You spend the entire game beefing up this one dude that
was fun.
Sire Denarthius in Hearthstone recently, which was kind of the same thing. Like every time one of your thing died, a Sire Denarthius would get bigger, and then you dropped him on the board and like would battle cry deal 30 damage. So like
that doesn't sound fun.
It's a deck
I haven't played Hearthstone in a while.
Yeah, it's a deck that you have to work towards. Like that's the kind of thing, and that's why the Devastator to me is like a work towards card. Those are Flake decks. So yes, the Devastator is a Flake card. It is absolutely a Flake card.
I will say this about the Devastator. It is the first card I've seen where I have thought, I might take the damage from Galactic Ambition to play this faster, right? Because Galactic Ambition is a card that I continue to keep my eye on because it's a rare card and it potentially does very powerful things, but you also have to weigh that cost of, why would I want to take a ton of damage? But this, because it has Sentinel and Overwhelm, if your opponent doesn't have like the immediate spot removal for you're likely to recoup the value back. Right?
Dude.
You are walling up your threatening damage. So Galactic Ambition, I always kind of keep that in my back pocket when I see new big cards. And this is the first one where I've thought like, okay, I might take the damage to make this happen. And even if I don't get to deal the full 10 to a unit at that stage of the game, dealing 7, because that might be the resources you have, still entirely fine.
So go ahead.
I was going to say you're getting your value out of it. The only other thing real quick, and then I will defer to you, Doa, is this also calls back to the card we just talked about, Infiltrator Skill. Infiltrator Skill might have a heck of a lot more value in space because we've seen a lot less Saboteur there. And the fact that it does not care whether it's space or ground means that somebody might drop a Devastator in front of you and you're like, all right, I pay 1 and go around it.
Totally.
Well, you pay 1 and go around it until the Devastator is like, okay, but on my turn, I'm going to go through you.
and overwhelm for a ton of extra damage as well. So you pay a price, but at least you can get through it with Saboteur's Skill. That's true. Infiltrator's Skill. That's what I meant.
Dude, this card, man, I'm telling you, like there was the other one. Was it the Avenger? There was another Star Destroyer, the one where it's like your opponent's first event they play is canceled.
What was that one?
Like everything about this speaks to me. Now, the next thing I want to see is a command/villainy or whatever the other one, vigilance card that allows you to put a shield on your base. Because then that card that you're talking about, Charmer, where you can take damage to the base, if there's a shield on your base, you don't take that damage. It gets absorbed by the shield, right? So
can you put shields on your base?
Well, we haven't seen that yet.
Okay, I thought maybe.
But like, what if one of the locations is Hoth and like Echo Base, and then it's a 25 health thing, and literally just says like, as an epic action, you could turn on a shield.
I don't know, man. Hoth didn't go so well for the Rebels, so I don't know if we're gonna get out of that location per se. But
still, this card, man, I'm so enamored with this card.
Relentless was the other card you were talking about.
Oh, Relentless, right? Yeah. No, it's neat. And talking about the Galactic, what was the card you mentioned again, Charmer?
Galactic Ambition. It's 7, and you take damage to play a non-heroism unit from hand.
So we've got DJ Super Laser, who becomes a resource when he dies. We've got Resupply, which just comes into play as a resource. We've got the card Command, which you can play as a resource. So we do have ways to like ramp up pretty quickly, and then if you get to 7, you might be able to do it early enough in the game to be like, yeah, I'll take 10 damage on my base and I'll play this
100%.
giant ship that you can't handle, you know? So
it's entirely possible you could be dropping this thing on like turn 3.
Yeah.
You start at 2 resources, right? So if you start with your 2 and right out of the gate, you play the first ramp spell. So now next turn, you're up to 4. You play like DJ Super Laser and then somehow find a way to kill him, or you play another one of the just, ramp events.
Yeah.
You could get there potentially. Is it going to happen often? No, but like you could theoretically try to get this thing as early as like turn 3. But even like 4 or 5 still feels really impactful.
Dude,
or even getting out one of the other Star Destroyers feels good.
Sure.
Until your opponent plays Vanquish.
But like just,
and then you're like, oops.
But what you're talking about, Charm3r, is like Tron, right? Like if you get the pieces in order, you're essentially unbeatable because you're putting out your big bad way ahead of the curve. And that's the thing, right? Like if that happens, perfect. And people might say like, okay, but if you're cheating it out with 7 resources, then it's not dealing its full potential because it's not dealing the 10 damage. Who the hell cares, man? Like, if you're getting this out, there's a very good chance that they're going to have nothing on the board. Because keep in mind, when you're at 7, they might be at like 4 or 5 resources. So what do they have on the board? Something with like a 5-point ass? Like, you just drop this, squash it, and then they have a 10-10 on. You have a 10-10 on the board that they can't penetrate that early, and then you just keep swinging with it, and and then they're on like a 2-turn clock.
And then they play Vanquish for 5.
I was going to say, it's also meta dependent, right? So, yes, Vanquish, that's a problem. But against like an aggression deck, completely different. There's also, Waylay, the cunning one? That's the one that I'm like more worried about because it's like, now it's going back to my hand.
Yeah, that'd be rough.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. So there will be answers, but this definitely has some appeal to just slapping this down and saying like, if you got it, you got it. Yep. But if not, like you're going to be eating it for a couple of turns.
Okay, let's move on to the last one. One of the happiest characters I've ever seen in my life, Charm3r.
Are you trying to say that it looks like me?
No,
because it
not in any
like
way, shape, or form. Yeah, it's
because you actually think it's happy. I just see Harold, like the Harold meme where he's like, hide
the pain, Harold. Yeah.
Ardent Sympathizer to me is hide the pain, Harold.
Like, let's go
it's
to
hard
war.
to really tell the expressions on a
Celestin.
Celestin, right. Nien Nub, the famous Celestin co-pilot of Lando during the battle over Endor, over the forest moon of Endor, that is. But it's hard to kind of tell the emotions, I think, on Celestin's.
I don't know, man.
Like, he looks fairly neutral to me, neutral to a little bit happy. Yeah,
dude,
he's loving life.
Look at his eyes. Aggressive. If you focus in on his mind, he's just like he's got like some happy song going on. He's got some sick jats going on in his mind right now as he's just
so happy to be nuking these civilians.
Chumbawamba or something. Nuking civilians.
What
makes you think he's a bad guy?
Well,
he's an ardent sympathizer.
I mean, he's an ardent sympathizer, but he's also just aggression and has the trooper tag. So in my head, he's not a rebel trooper.
You're saying he's a mercenary sympathizer, huh?
Yeah, potentially. Dude, I don't know.
He's doing what he loves, okay? And he's not working a day in his life. Look at him.
He loves killing.
Right, and he loves killing. That's my point.
He does look pretty, again, like fairly bemused.
Okay, I got it. Do you guys remember that episode of Rick and Morty with Crumbopulous Michael, the assassin, who's just happy to be an assassin?
I've not watched that show.
He's basically
I've not watched it.
He's like, hi Morty, I'm Crumbopulous. Hi, Morty. I'm Crumbopulous Michael. I'm an assassin. I work for your grandfather. And he's like, I'll kill anything. Children, women, anything you want. I'm happy to do it. And he's just so happy. And then he cuts to him running away. And he's like, oh, boy, here I go killing again. And then he just starts murdering all kinds of people. And he's Crumbopulous, this guy. He's Crumbopulous Celestin.
Ardent Sympathizer definitely could have like the comic book bubble with a quote that just says, oh boy, here I go killing again.
For sure.
I could 100% see that. Okay.
So
we
this
should
is why
probably
we
talk
need
about
lore
the card.
text on these cards again.
Yeah. We should probably talk about the card. Ardent Sympathizer is a 3-cost ground unit with only aggression as the aspect. Has a 3/3 stat line, just a trooper. But while you have the initiative, this unit gets +2/+0. So while you have initiative, this is a single aspect 3 for a 5/3, which is very above rate. And I dig it. It's a common, but I think that this is definitely something that I would target in draft or sealed deck formats. And I could, at least for set 1, see this finding a way into some aggressive decks as well. Like 3 for a 5/3 is very cost effective.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you play this card, and then your opponent is like, oh, are they going to take the initiative on their next action? Like, do I need to take the initiative now? Or my thing that has exactly 5 health is going to get killed by their first action next turn? Like, yeah, it presents some real conundrums for your opponent when you play this card, I think. So, yeah, I mean, it does seem like a card that'll get overshadowed as more come out down the line for the game. But in set 1, this might be a pretty popular one.
It definitely will be, I think. It's a common 3/3 for 3 single aspect card that can only get better if you take the initiative, which is something I think Aggression has always wanted to do. It's traditionally, based on a lot of the cards we've seen, has operated with initiative as something that it wants. And yeah, you're right. Like, and this card also, once again, reinforces the fact that I think that Star Wars Unlimited is so much more layered than on first glance. It forces, like the scenario that you guys put forward, there's so many decisions to make when playing this or facing off against this card. Every action that you're going to be deciding on, it's like, man, like you said, like I've got a 5-drop or I got a 5 body that I want to protect. I have to like take this initiative, which basically shuts down my turn but protects this unit. Like the decisions are there based purely off the fact that this happy-go-lucky murderous Sullustan just so happy. He's so happy. I'm just looking at him. I like this. Like it's just it's a good card. I think that this is going to find its way into those aggression decks.
I will say this is another card where I'm like, what is the background? He's in a field and I see like kind of hills in the back, but it's kind of
this one I will defend. Like, all right, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
This one I'm going to defend. Hear me out.
Sure.
The little inside baseball here. I actually got to see the first design of this, and they had to remove the pile of corpses that was originally in the back.
Oh, okay.
To make it a more family-friendly card. So they just put in generic hills and stuff to cover what was a mountain of dead aliens and civilians.
Right. The way he was just spattered with blood. I did hear about that now that you mentioned that, and yeah, that it was too far. Was the directive. Yeah, tone it down a little bit.
I just picture like at the end of this mission, like whoever hired him is like, all right there, Crumbopulus Francis, here's your reward. Oh no, man, it's all good. I had a great time. I got to kill thousands of people. Don't even worry about it. This is all here I go. And he just takes off.
You know, another interesting thing with this card, though, is he's holding his blaster rifle in the traditional kind of weird way that the stormtroopers hold it sometimes in A New Hope, where they're holding like the trigger, but then they're not going like this. Yeah, they're holding like a little tiny thing on the side that doesn't look like it's something you're supposed to hold. So he's kind of got the traditional, kind of a little bit weird New Hope blaster holding stance there.
Hey,
just wanted to shout that out.
You don't survive in that kind of chaotic lifestyle without knowing how to hold a blaster, dude.
That's why he's so happy. Right way, he's a stormtrooper that can actually hit his target. So like he's having the time of his life.
Well, he's not human, so they wouldn't accept him as a stormtrooper. If we're really here, but he does like to kick it old school with his blaster maneuvering. Yeah.
So thank you, Brett Ballett, for the spoiler on this one as well. And thank you, Luke Harrington, for the artwork that has me so overjoyed. Not to the degree of this character is being overjoyed for the relentless slaughter of God knows how many innocent people, but hey, he's having a good time. So
what do you think's rolled up on his back there? What do you think that is? Sleeping bags? Blankets? Those are just body bags. Those are just rolls of body bags that he's ready to just toss on all of his victims when he's done.
Those are actually his people keep scrolls on them at all times.
Really?
That has a full list of all the people they've killed.
Okay.
And so he's just got scrolls and scrolls on his back.
I
believe you for a second. And honestly, I kind of like that idea for like a warrior of like some sort of fantasy culture that they keep like a record of all their victories like on them. And so you see like the more like badass warriors have like giant scrolls on their backs and stuff like, oh, I might steal that actually for like a D&D campaign or something sometime.
I would love
That's
it.
A cool idea actually.
As like if you're doing something like cyberpunk themed or whatever, like if you could imagine somebody wearing like a suit jacket, but it has digital capability, right? So like imagine a scrolling thing, but instead of it being like the traditional like matrix whatever, it's literally just a list of all the names going like ticker tape around them of their body count.
So you're saying it's like a new age way instead of like the teardrop tattoo, it's just
it's not Mr. Zaz, it's Mr. Pizzazz, because he's putting some flair on his kill count.
It's just as like he unrolls it. It's just a gigantic artistic tapestry that is depicting all of his exploits, and it's just piles and piles.
Actually, that would be kind of cool.
Right?
Like imagine a traditional art, and so it's not just like, oh, here's the name. It's like, here's how I did it.
Yeah.
Right. It's like building his own lore.
This guy, I swear.
Oh, dude, I'm getting like such great ideas for like writing stuff right now.
You're welcome. Here's another idea for free. When you make a deck that's centered around nothing but Imperial Star Destroyers, you get altars to make them all look like pizza slices, and you call it a pizza party.
What? Where did this come from?
For that one.
Where did that come from? That came from absolutely nowhere. All right, we're gonna pull the plug on the spoilers again. There you have it, friends. Again, today being November 2nd, and we went on board. So anything that came out after this, we're not responsible for. But
Hey,
well,
Flake.
we're not responsible for any of this other stuff either. We didn't make the cards. We're just telling you about them.
Yeah. So Flake, when you're maybe on a galactic vacation and you're hanging out, say on the outer rim, you're enjoying a picnic in a nice lush field. And then over the horizon, you see an ardent sympathizer slowly approaching. What do you say?
I think my concern, frankly, would be I hope I'm wearing nice clothes for when they paint me on his tapestry of doom. So but ultimately, yes, because when he shows up with that gigantic smile on his face, I'm going to say, I have a very bad feeling about this.
I got a bad feeling about this.
I have a bad feeling about this.
I've got a bad feeling about it.
Quiet.
Okay, so needless to say, friends, there wasn't much of a topic du jour for this particular episode, but we have
filled the time though.
Dude, it's an hour and 15 minutes.
I know.
We also discussed
so much for a short episode.
Yeah, we also
we gotta trim this.
Well, we talked about how this episode was going to be a shorter one, and maybe we'll clear the mailbag, but I don't think that's happening this time, friends. I think that we're going to have to do one and move on.
Done, yeah.
So I'll let one of you guys decide, but it's not the middle one.
Okay, I like that one, but I want to wait until everything's revealed before, we talk about it.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Do we want to do... I think it's the same person. It might actually be the same person. Lightsaber Larry and Larry H. Like, it's Larry Hurley 28 on Twitter, and then Larry H. I think it's the same person.
Could be.
It might be. So, either way, a Larry is getting a question this week, so thank you, Larry.
Thank you, Larry.
Yeah, you guys, one of you guys decide. I don't want the responsibility.
Let's do the bottom one, because I think that one...
I can't read it.
That one's fun. I'll do it. All right. So,
okay.
Well, now I can't. Thanks, Flake.
That's not me. That's not me. My hands are here.
That was me. Sorry, I was trying to make it bigger.
Oh, yeah, I was
all using the same Google Doc for the show.
I'm sorry.
Right?
I'm sorry. Graphic design guy just.
It's a shame that it's a
put
shame the
images
show
in-
won't be able to see what just happened, because I was literally getting ready to read it, and then it like shrunk and it stretched and it contorted.
Okay, so just hit Control Z a few times to bring this back to reality. Oh my God! What are you
There
doing?
goes gravity.
Oh, there goes gravity.
There you go. There you go.
Is
I
that
shrunk
it?
down.
Okay.
That's how it was originally. I didn't. That's why I couldn't read it.
Okay,
All
I
right,
have.
well, I can read this one.
Please,
So
oh,
just
nice.
don't touch it. I can read it. Don't touch
Not-
it.
Hands off. Hands off.
Here we go. Larry says, I have my 30th birthday coming up on November 6th. So first of
Oh,
all, happy birthday.
happy
This is why I
pre-birthday.
picked this one, because it was time sensitive.
Happy
I wanted to say
birthday,
happy
Larry.
birthday, Larry.
Yeah, that's good.
And it got me thinking of a fun question to ask y'all. What is the best physical Star Wars gift you think someone could get you or has gotten you? Personally, I think a signed Samuel L. Jackson Mace Windu lightsaber hilt or a SWU Mace showcase card when it comes would be amazing. He's my absolute favorite character in the Star Wars universe so far. And then P.S., where's the sideshow you talked about in earlier episodes where y'all go over Star Wars movies and media, hot takes and all?
Well, we're gonna do that. I think.
Oh, that's the other show I do.
Yes, I'm going to actually preface this for Larry. You should check out Doa's podcast.
You can't even remember the name of my podcast, can you?
It's like Nerd Legion,
What's the
isn't
name
it?
of my- Oh, okay, you got it. You made me wonder.
Yeah,
for a second there, 'cause you're like, check out Doa's podcast.
I was I briefly forgot the name of the co-caster, which is Monte Cristo. I don't know why I was thinking it was Casanova, but it's Monte Cristo. So
It is.
so it's Doa and Monte. It's Nerd Legion. They do a lot of this. So before you get the horrendous takes of Charmer and I down the line, you should probably go and listen to professionals do it.
If you liked Ahsoka, you might not be a big fan of our podcast about Ahsoka. I will say that, but we're honest. We're honest.
That's all that matters. I want to ask you guys before we get into this question. 30th birthdays. What did you guys do for your 30th?
Mine
Where
was a
was
really
I for my 30th?
depressing answer. So I did nothing, but I'm not a big birthday person.
Oh, okay.
I think so. I must have 30th, 2000. I'm old. 2013. 10 years ago, this very year. I was in Korea, so I probably just went out and partied in Korea
That makes sense.
with all my esports friends.
I went to Vegas.
What's it like to have friends, guys?
We're your friends. Shut up,
It's
dude.
very time consuming. I don't recommend it.
The older you get, it's just remember we're talking about EV. Yeah, friends, bad EV. Totally bad EV. Okay, so in terms of a gift, one of the best Star Wars gifts. So the thing about it is that all my family and friends know that the easiest thing that they think is just a surefire home run of a gift for me is anything with Star Wars branded on it. So I'm not kidding you. I have a Star Wars slow cooker, which I love, by the way. That was excellent because I love to cook. I have a Star Wars slow
Nice.
cooker. I have a Star Wars toaster. I have a Star Wars waffle maker. I have all kinds of.
BB-8 one?
No, it's not the BB-8 one.
Oh, I have the BB-8 one.
Which
Oh,
is
okay.
awesome, by the way. I wish I
Yes.
had it.
Good waffles.
But like they always get me. It's like, oh, here's a Star Wars coloring book because they saw. It's like there's so
They
much
think
of it.
you're 5 or what? Like,
That's
it's-
but it's just easy because they don't know what to get me, so they just find the first thing that they see with Star Wars branding on it, and they
Oh,
get
okay.
it for
That's
me.
nice.
Yes, but one thing I do have, I don't know if you can see it, but it's on the shelf, is I was gifted by my girlfriend at the time she got me a silver coin that had the Millennium Falcon on it, and another gift that I loved it so much. Like, it was so awesome.
It was Canadian Mint that made that, or the UK Mint, one of the two.
One of them. I'm not sure. It might have been the Canadian Mint. I know they did the Star Wars thing, but another one
I
she
remember
got
seeing that one.
was a silver coin, again, pure silver with the Rebel logo on it. And those live prominently on my little display over there because I thought that was awesome. I don't know how much it cost. I didn't inquire. It's not my place to inquire. It was a wonderful gift. But hey, man, signed Samuel L. Jackson Mace Windu lightsaber hilt, that is pretty freaking cool too.
That is that sounds like a priceless artifact to me. That would be pretty neat. Yeah.
It's
I
true.
mean, I think a lot of Star Wars fans would go with lightsaber hilt. But I would say I would want mine unsigned. I would just want it, as it was, on the film set. I'm not a big like signature guy or like photo with a famous person guy. I'm just like I like things that have memories attached to them. So I'd like a hilt, but without the signature. Yeah.
Charmer?
Yeah, this is tough. I think a Sabine hilt, like a good quality replica, would be up there. It's very weird because I love Sabine, but I'm actually not a
Jedi?
huge. I yes,
Of them all.
of them all. But I think that's part of the charm.
Okay.
But I don't like the design of her blasters a ton. Like if I was going for something just non lightsaber. And I know they make them because there's a company that's like Blaster Factory or something like that, and they do these like really high tech, good custom replicas. I'd want one of the Jyn Erso ones because I think that blaster design might be my favorite just in general. It helps that it's one of my favorite characters, but it's the one that when I looked at it, I was like, yeah, that looks like, what I would imagine like a scruffy rebel blaster would be, right? It's not. It doesn't look military. It looks like something that you would like pick up at a galactic pawn shop. And for whatever reason, that just, appealed to me. So I think that would be another good one. And I'm kind of with you. I don't think that I would want the object signed, but I would if I had like a really cool display base, right? Or a frame, if I was going to frame it or something. I think it'd be cool to have that signed as part of it.
I'm going to, what's the term? I'm going to sort of disagree with your decision that she's the worst Jedi, because the worst Jedi, frankly, are the 2 sacks of potatoes that immediately die when confronting Palpatine. And their names are Agen Kalar and Saesee Tin, because they go to arrest Palpatine, and the first thing he does is ignite a saber. There's 4 of them, and he just goes, and they're like,
They were just surprised, I guess. I don't know.
What
I always thought that was lame too.
Like, how are you surprised?
They were force frightened, Flake.
I think I take that as an indication of just how like impotent the Jedi Order was at that point. That like they were just so full of themselves they couldn't imagine even someone who they suspected to be a Sith Lord to be able to take them. So I feel like there's a lot of like hubris of the Jedi Order is a big theme in the prequel trilogy. I feel like that's a prime example of that. But they do die pathetically. That is true.
Yeah. So worst Jedi, probably not. I'm gonna give it to those 2 clown shoes.
I will add too, if Larry's relatives or significant other, possibly, if you're out there listening, you can still find sections of the storyboards from the original trilogy for a fairly reasonable cost at various prop stores and auction places around the internet. It's because what they did is they printed out a copy of, so it's not the hand-drawn one, it's a printed copy of that, and they would make one copy for the heads of each part of the production. And so there's at least 6 of each of these out there somewhere, and then whoever knows how many of those survive. But anyway, there's a high enough amount that you can find them pretty easily. I have one from each of the original trilogy, and they're really cool. So I recommend looking those up if you want a neat prop, or not prop, but neat, film relevant thing. Yeah.
I don't know if it would work very well as a gift, because I think part of the fun is the personalization. But like I think about, I took my family to Disney World. We did Star Wars Galaxy Edge. We all did the lightsaber build thing. And that was a lot of fun, even if it's, everybody gets some variation of the same thing because it's like pre-developed parts. Just like getting to make your own was really cool. And so like in that thread, if I was thinking about something like physical that's, different, but you could still personalize or be unique, I think it'd be really cool to get like a high quality made like Mandalorian helmet, but like with your own, paint job and customizations, right? Because that's one of those things where even if it's not a canon character, everyone knows what it is immediately, and then you could personalize it. That could be pretty cool as well.
All right, I changed my answer. I want my own A-wing. That's what I want. That's the gift I want. If you get your own Mandalorian helmet and you get a lightsaber, I want an A-wing. That's hyperspace ready.
Well, I want a Star Destroyer then.
Well, I want a
Just
Death
gonna
Star.
one up each other. Oh, well, the Death Star is easy to take down.
I
so go ahead.
want the rip-off Death Star.
You know what I want?
Which one?
You know what I want? I want Crumbopulus Francis on my side.
Oh,
That's
wow.
what I want. Crumbopulus Francis.
Expensive contract.
Yeah. No, he does it for fun, man. You saw his face.
All right. Well,
Just happy to
what
be
is
part
it?
of the team.
You can't put a price on fun.
No. Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's the mailbag this week. Thank you so much, Larry, for the question. There was another question from Garbage Rollers, another great content crew. We are going to dig into that, what you asked, in the future in more in depth. That's a whole episode, frankly, that we're going to dive into. So thank you so much to everybody for contributing. Again, if you want to submit a question for the Bad Feeling Mailbag, you can do so Wampa Radio Podcast at gmail.com or at Wampa Radio on Twitter. You can contact me at Watch Flake. You've got at GGDOA and at that Charm3r. We're also available on Discord. You can send us a message where we do get some submissions there. So thank you very much. That does it for this episode.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Not bad. I mean,
Good chat, all.
Oh, good chat. Good
Both
stuff.
teams played hard.
Yeah.
That's right.
We've all
I
played
just
a
hope
good
everyone had fun.
Yeah,
Because that's why we compete.
the real winners are the fans.
Bringing it back around.
So
We do it for the love of the game.
That's right.
Yeah, well,
we
Lord
do it for
knows-
the love of the podcast.
Lord knows we're not getting paid. So
That's very true.
okay. I also want to invite everybody, if you haven't already, please hit subscribe on the YouTube channel and follow us, hit all the notification stuff on all the platforms. And again, you guys are really great at doing this, and I implore you, if you haven't already, please leave a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you are listening to us. It goes so far for us, and it does wonders. So thank you for that. And yeah, that's it. That's all, friends. Charmer?
May the force.
Whoa.
Oh, no.
I wasn't
Made
ready.
the robot angry.
You did, yeah. Well, don't worry about it. Crumbopulus Francis is going to clean that up. Easy peasy.
Here I go killing again.
Oh, yeah, we're not ending on that, so hit us with it,
May the
Charmer.
force be with you.